Okay, well, I'm very pleased to be presenting this work at this conference. I was hoping to be personally in Cardiff as it was planned. Part of my research was done in Cardiff, and I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to share some of the developments that are based on the research that I did some time ago, looking at attitudes to bilingualism and looking at attitudes to minority languages in Cardiff and Wales as well. I would like to now share my screen. Okay, so can everybody see that?
That's perfect, Ina. Diolch yn fawr.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to tell you about this approach that I've shaped based on my research and based on my work in schools. Okay, it looks like there is a problem for me to move the slides. Okay, thank you. What I'm going to tell you about this approach, Healthy Linguistic Diet, is based on many years of work, starting with research that I did in attitudes to bilingualism in minority languages, and that research was done in London and Cardiff. And then I was part of a bigger project called LUCID, which stands for Languages in Urban Communities for Diversity and Integration in Europe. And we had 13 multilingual cities on this project around Europe, and also colleagues from Canada and Australia as our partners. And we were looking at contexts which had many languages, and we were looking at different spheres such as education, business, healthcare, and private sphere. And we have reports from all these cities available on the LUCID website. I am interested in attitudes of different stakeholders, so I've done a cycle of studies with parents, with head teachers in mainstream schools, and also with politicians and policymakers. When I came to Cardiff, I was fortunate enough to be able to have access to people who worked for the Welsh.
Could we hold it there, Dina? I think you've muted yourself somehow. Just press that little... Dyna ni. Diolch yn fawr.
Is this okay?
That's perfect.
Yeah, it actually said on my screen, host muted you. So I don't know what...
Oh, I'm sorry. It wasn't me. I'm not guilty. I'm very sorry. Diolch yn fawr.
Okay, as long as everybody can hear me now. Then also I will give you insights into research that comes from cognitive sciences, and now I'm currently working with Thomas Bach, who is a neuroscientist at University of Edinburgh, and this is our interdisciplinary joint work, and we are very much eager to promote it. And currently I'm working with colleagues in Italy. We are rolling out Healthy Linguistic Diet as a regional strategy in Italy. We have schools in Calabria and in Rome who are going to implement this approach, and we are going to evaluate it and consult students and teachers involved, and obviously further develop this approach based on the feedback that we get through the project in Italy. Again, I have problem moving the slides. Okay. Excellent, thank you. Okay, so in my work, I have come across colleagues in education, in academia, who promote the view that language shift is natural, that if families, individuals move countries, eventually, at some point, they will lose their first language, and this is something that we shouldn't really worry about, that this is natural. Also, I've come across teachers in schools who will tell me that their students only want to learn in English, they don't want their home languages to be part of their learning, and also that their parents are only interested for children to learn in English. The kind of the political line that's been coming through the interviews that I'm doing that I've been doing with politicians is that home languages are really private matters of communities. So some communities will choose to engage with them, support them, open mother tongue schools, and other communities will not want to do that. One of the Conservative MPs whom I interviewed in the first cycle of my research, and somebody who's now high up in this current government, but obviously everything is anonymized here. He talked about the freedom to decide, so that every individual, every family has a freedom to decide which culture to inherit and what to take on board. And he talks about families and communities who take it seriously and continue to speak it at home, and some other families who choose not to go down that path. But I argue in my writing and in my work that this kind of discourse of wrapping language loss and language death really eventually into some sort of civil liberties and freedom of choice is really not helpful, and it's actually endangering many languages and putting individuals in a situation of language loss. When you look at literature and theory, Paul Bourdieu writes about this kind of process as process of misrecognition, where minority groups will be adopting these messages that are coming from wider community, and they will be themselves contributing to the processes of language loss and language death. And Bourdieu terms this the result of a process of misrecognition. He terms it as symbolic violence, and I'm sure that many of you are familiar with his work. I just want to quickly reflect on the concepts of language loss and language death in terms of how I've encountered them. I've interviewed children in London schools, and here is a quote from a child who was 15 years old when I interviewed her. And when I asked her if she thought that first language that she spoke, which was Arabic, was going to be useful for the career that she wanted to pursue, and she was interested in pursuing career in tourism, her reply to me was, "Miss, who needs the languages of immigrants?" And I found this reply extremely powerful, because this child was only in England for 11 months at that time. And I'm sure she didn't come from Iraq thinking that Arabic didn't matter. So I was very interested to expose the factors that made this girl feel this way about her first language, which is actually a world language. And also interesting that she is using this term languages of immigrants rather than referring to Arabic as a world language or her first language. So I've actually taken this quote to be also the title of my publication, the book which is called "Miss, Who Needs the Languages of Immigrants? Attitudes to Minority Languages in England and Wales." This is something that I'm taking with me and saying, well, what is wrong with our system when children who speak these other languages, and some of them speak very important world languages, feel this way about their linguistic capital. On the other hand, we are we're talking about language loss there at the individual level, children who might stop using their first language and therefore lose it. But also on the bigger level, we're talking about language death, that certain languages will not be able to survive over the next few decades. My example is a community of Arbanasi speakers in southern Croatia. Arbanasi is a language very close to Albanian, and people who now live in southern Croatia speak Arbanasi, but there are only around 60 people left who speak this language. And I've been involved.
Address, please.
Sorry?
So I don't know, Dinah, that didn't come from me or you. I'm not quite sure what happened. So you carry on. I apologize.
Okay, so I've been involved with this community in terms of researching the background of their language, researching their current position, and also supporting the community to put some strategies in place in order to secure the kind of survival of their language. David Crystal writes a lot about language death, and according to his estimates, only 10% of languages are really in a safe category. 90% of languages are in some sort of endangered category. And when you think about that, you know, this is huge, but we are not actually hearing much about this in terms of raising awareness amongst wider population in terms of, you know, I always say on TV, we always have programs about endangered species, and so we should. But have you ever seen a program about an endangered language? I think that this is something that only stays within the circle of linguists who are exploring these kind of issues. But we need to make sure that we raise awareness on these issues in a wider population, especially amongst educators. And, you know, this is, again, part of what I'm going to tell you later on about healthy linguistic diet. So my question is really, what can educators do to contribute against these processes of language loss and language death? How can we engage with language hierarchies in order to provide conditions to develop practice and policy which is hierarchy-free? When I came to Wales to interview colleagues there about bilingualism and attitudes to minority languages, I was told that obviously there's huge emphasis on English-Welsh bilingualism, and they told me, well, mainly when we talk about bilingualism, we mean English-Welsh. And they said that they fear that other languages were sort of seen as the third class, and that there aren't links being made in terms of how bilingualism is promoted of English and Welsh to say, okay, all these benefits also apply to all other languages that you speak. So this is what we mean when it comes to language hierarchy and how language hierarchy reflects in practice and policy. Every school has in its mission statement that the mission of that school is to provide conditions for the children to develop their full potential. This is kind of one of the big mantras of education. And I strongly argue that if we have a child who comes from a background where he or she uses another language, you know, other languages that are not the languages of education or which are taught as foreign languages in that school, in order for that child to develop their full potential, we need to provide conditions so that that child can maintain and further develop the home languages that he or she brings into schooling. And also, I'm interested in achieving equality for all languages in terms of their value, because we all know that, you know, if we are teachers of foreign languages, that there are certain languages which are seen as desirable to learn and have. You know, at the moment, Spanish is very popular. Then there's also a shift in terms of position of Mandarin, which I'll talk about. And, you know, obviously French, German, Italian. But other languages are not seen as having value that's equal to these very high status languages, which have been taught as modern foreign languages for a long while. So I'm interested to find arguments and research evidence which we can present and say, okay, this is kind of the evidence that supports the view that all languages are valuable, all languages are an important resource for individuals and society, and children should be encouraged to continue using and learning in their home languages. And where do we start in terms of this process? I think, first of all, it's very important for educators to understand processes which result in language hierarchies. In literature, this phenomenon is theorized through concepts of language and power, and I've been interested to identify the commonalities when it comes to relationships of language and power in different historical and geographical contexts. Because obviously languages are going to be positioned differently depending on where we are in the world and what kind of historical era we're talking about. Recently, I was with a school in Atlanta in the US, and there I encountered for the first time something very unusual, very interesting in terms of this research. And this was the fact that this school had bilingual English-Spanish pathway. And the parents who wanted their children to go to this pathway were monolingual American speakers. Whereas on the other hand, you had families who spoke Spanish at home and they didn't want their children to go to English-Spanish pathway. So you have a situation where we're talking about the same language in the same context, same historical period, and there are very different attitudes by two different communities. What's happening there is that families who have this Latino background kind of want to distance themselves from it, and therefore don't want their children to go to the English-Spanish pathway. On the other hand, monolingual English-speaking American parents understand that Spanish is becoming more and more important in the US and also a world language, so they want their children to go to this pathway. Now, in the future, when you need to apply for jobs that require knowledge of Spanish, it is very likely that children who went to English-Spanish pathway are going to have more success in applying for those jobs because they will have qualifications in both languages. So that's just an example of what I mean in terms of analyzing these processes in different historical and geographical contexts. In my work, I have identified 4 key processes that impact on shaping language hierarchies. And I'm going to tell you quickly about each of them. So the first one is capital accumulation, and it's about being able to turn your linguistic skills into qualifications, so to convert them into a qualification. Now, this is very important in terms of employability, in terms of wanting to take your home language forward in your studies at higher education institutions. And this is why it's very important that children are aware from early years that they need to work towards taking exams in their first languages, even if the school is not offering courses in those languages. But the issue is that we do not have, for example, GCSEs available in all languages that our communities speak. I've been involved with a community, Albanian-speaking community in England, and they've been lobbying for many years for Albanian language to become a GCSE exam. There are many Albanian kids who go to complementary schools, who are well prepared to take an exam. Their parents are keen on that, but the kind of government is requesting that this community, first of all, needs to put in certain capital for this exam to be developed, but they also need to prove a business case for this exam to be developed. And they've managed to raise enough funds for the capital to be put down, but they haven't been successful in proving that there is a business case for England to have this exam available. Now, of course, this doesn't seem to be fair if there are children and parents who want this language and are prepared to invest into, making that a possible exam. So I'm sure that you are involved with schools and communities that might be in a similar situation, and in our discussion, if you would like to contribute an example of that kind of struggle, I would be glad to hear about that. The next key process is market demand. So at every point in time, there is a market demand for certain languages. And this is not something that we as educators can have any influence on. Market demand is going to be shaped by what's happening economically on the world stage. Sometimes it can be shaped by political processes, humanitarian crises, and there will be a need for certain type of language, certain type of interpreters, translators. Mandarin is an excellent example following the economic boom of China, when suddenly Mandarin shifted from being just a community language taught in schools organized by the Chinese community and becoming a language that's offered by very prestigious schools. And now we have also government money pumped into strategies and resources to actually make this even like faster courses and more focused courses for children who are willing to learn Mandarin. So this is what I'm saying here is, what's happening to Mandarin. Can this be turned upward mobility because it went from a status of a community language that was only of interest to that community to being a very desirable modern foreign language? And do you have any examples from your own context where there was a sudden shift in the way a language was positioned? The next process is institutionalizing discrimination of languages. In England, we have this division on modern foreign languages and community languages. And historically, this goes back to 1889 when the Order for Modern Languages was introduced, where schools first had obligation to offer foreign languages as a subject on the curriculum. But the languages in that order were divided into Class A and Class B languages. You can guess in Class C was French, German, Spanish, Italian. Class B were all other languages. And the schools had the obligation to offer at least one language from Class A, and if they had the opportunity, they could offer languages for Category B. We now see this reflected again in this discourse, modern foreign languages, community languages. And, when we go to meetings with colleagues in Europe, everybody's asking, in continental Europe, everybody's asking, well, what are these community languages? People are confused about this concept because obviously every language to be a living language needs to have a community of speakers. So all our languages are community languages. And I have argued together with many colleagues that we should actually change the way that languages are positioned in the curriculum and have a strategy which is going to focus on world languages, and that all languages should belong to this umbrella term, world languages. Therefore, in that way, to get rid of this dichotomy that is institutionalized in the policy. We came very close to this. There was a bid by a teaching development agency that the Institute won with several partners, and I was on the team. And actually, one of the people whom I interviewed for my research was the lead professional for that strategy. And he actually said in the briefing meeting that we had that it was while we were doing the interview for my research, that he started questioning this dichotomy. And again, this is exactly what I want to see research being, and that's kind of vehicle for change from transformation, not just tools for gaining new knowledge and new insights. So we were on the brink of creating this new national world languages strategy, but then there was a change of government in 2010, and this unfortunately didn't go ahead. But this is a proposal from many linguists in this field that we should have concept world languages used in our education in order to get rid of this dichotomy and marginalizing certain languages by placing them into a category B or category community languages. And the fourth key process are political processes as very important ways of either marginalizing languages or giving them conditions to be revitalized and to flourish. So these kind of political processes go on the continuum from colonization and oppression to political autonomy. I think, the changes in policy that have happened in Wales over many decades and centuries are really good example of what can be done and undone in terms of political will and strategic approach. I'm sure that colleagues from different contexts also have good examples where languages were successfully revived, or on the opposite, if they were marginalized and therefore brought to the brink of being endangered or even facing language death. So moving on to the next step, language hierarchies are extremely powerful. They are shaped by so many different complex processes that we as educators cannot influence. So I'm asking a question: can we actually overcome language hierarchies in education, and how can we do this? So my quest has been to find a way in which languages would be seen to provide the same value. And I have come to a conclusion that if we use the evidence from the research that shows the cognitive advantages of bilingualism, we have a winning card here. And we can then say that these cognitive benefits apply to all different combinations of languages. And of course, we know it's not only bilingualism, but multilingualism, and we should really encourage children to speak more than 2 languages. The European policy is mother tongue +2 for every child. So I'm going to run very quickly through some key evidence that we have that I'm using to support my approach, healthy linguistic diet. And there are studies that cover each kind of key period of our life, starting with early years, where studies have provided evidence that children will have better focus if they're using 2 languages. So bilingual children in comparison to monolingual children will have better focus. And this benefit is also something that's perceived in adults, that, in the same way that children will be able to focus better, the adults will do that too. When we look at issues facing adults when it comes to onset of dementia, we know that there are key issues to do with being able to prioritize. And using 2 languages is all about prioritizing and being able to choose the appropriate format, the appropriate vocabulary between 2 competing languages that we have all the time. So this is what is kind of preparing our memory, our executive brain power to be better equipped later on to deal with issues that onset of dementia can bring. When it comes to adults, we also have evidence that it shows significant physical enhancement of our brain tissue, and it's evidence that suggests that if we are using two languages from an early age, this is where we're going to see the most significant changes. But there will also be changes later on in life. There are studies now done with people in their 70s who go through intensive language course for 3 weeks, and there will be changes to their brain that can be identified in the studies that are being done. So my colleague Thomas Bach published a study that's titled Never Too Late. And this is excellent in terms of promoting learning languages as a lifelong activity and encouraging adults to consider starting learning a new language later in life. Also, we know that using two languages will enhance bilateral use of our two hemispheres. And the evidence for this is so strong that now on the brain scans, when researchers identify this activity, they have termed it neurological signature for bilingualism because it is so prominent and so easy to identify. What we are interested in as educators is what impact bilingualism has on achievement in school, on success across the curriculum. Jim Cummins lists in his book Language, Power and Pedagogy 160 studies from different countries, different contexts, looking at children from a different socioeconomic background using different languages. And all these children achieve better than their monolingual peers across the curriculum. And one of the subject areas that particularly benefits from use of two languages has been identified as maths. And this is to do with development of abstract thinking that happens if we are using two languages, which then also is transferred to abstract thinking that we need in maths. So just to list very quickly other advantages that clinical research has identified, the fact that visual presentation and processing is going to be different to somebody who's bilingual in comparison to somebody who is monolingual, also audio processing, and then there will be advantageous benefits in terms of the use of both hemispheres. The latest evidence is very exciting, and it really highlights the fact that we are able to prolong quality life in later age by 3 to 5 years if we are using two languages. So the studies that have compared monolinguals and bilinguals have found that there is this delay of 3 to 5 years of bilingual people being able to put off dementia, and this is identified as the benefit of a better developed executive brain power, which can then resist for longer to these changes that are happening. Thomas Bach has been involved in bigger studies done in India with people also who are not literate, and it's been identified that there are benefits also for people who are not literate if they speak two languages. He's written about bilingualism as a stronger influence than any current cure medications that we have, and that's really the relationship between bilingualism and cognition needs to be our highest priority in terms of our health. And we know that dementia is identified as one of those illnesses that's on the rise and that's extremely costly to the societies, and it's absolutely devastating for individuals and societies. So how can we translate this into education, really, this health imperative? My kind of beginning of shaping a healthy linguistic diet goes back to one critical incident I have while doing a focus discussion group with teenagers in a London school. This focus group was brought together to discuss the fact that children from certain backgrounds, in this case Bengali children in this school, were not achieving as well as the other groups. And the initiative was to consult these children and to find out how they can be better supported to close this achievement gap. And in one of these groups, I had a child who said that, Miss, we underachieve because we speak 2 languages. This reflects very much the view of bilingualism as a problem, that bilingualism is something that will hold you back and that will not be supported in terms of achieving well in exams. So a very deficit model of bilingualism that we've been battling against. In that same group, another child responded and said, well, this is not true. I read in a scientific journal, it improves your brain. So for me, this moment was extremely important because as a teacher, as an educator, I was encouraging children to use their different languages, to produce homework, to use it as part of their learning, supporting them to go to community schools. But I didn't really use the opportunities to talk to children explicitly about benefits of bilingualism and why it's good to be bilingual. So at this moment, I knew that we cannot leave 14-year-old children to be looking for their own scientific literature to find out if bilingualism is good for them or not. We really need to take this on board as educators and structure the opportunities to talk to children explicitly about what it means to be bilingual and what the benefits are. So this was really the beginning of a healthy linguistic diet approach. My vision was that first of all, we need to provide these structured opportunities to talk with children, obviously adults and children, about benefits of bilingualism. Then we need to have a flow of affirmative messages with the aim that we want to get rid of these misconceptions and this kind of deficit view of bilingualism. And then also to encourage children and adults to develop behaviors and habits which would support lifelong development of bilingual, plurilingual competencies. So this was kind of a broad vision of what I wanted to achieve with this. I was involved with the work of the European Commission of reviewing language education in Europe, and I presented work on healthy linguistic diets at one of their functions, and they actually facilitated for me to meet Thomas Bach so that we could jointly work together. And since we started working together, we have shaped some key principles of our approach. And what we are saying is that our mission is to initiate and facilitate shift in thinking about learning another language. Currently, that is positioned as a key skill or an academic subject, but we want to position it as a key ingredient in our cognitive development and our well-being. So we know that often children in England will say, well, what is the point of learning another language? Everybody speaks English. If we present learning languages which is for our well-being, our cognitive development and health, then this argument, has no relevance. We also want to advocate an approach that's focusing on lifelong habits of using 2 or more languages. And we really want to say that, this process needs to take part from early years to advanced age. So in the same way that it's never too late to start, it's also never too early to, talk to children and get them to understand how important it is to exercise our brain in a way we do with 2 languages. Also, our mission is to reach out to children, parents, communities with accessible knowledge on cognitive benefits of bilingualism. So really, we want children in the playground, at home, to speak about benefits of bilingualism. In the same way that everybody knows we need 2 liters of water a day for healthy functioning of our bodies, we also want children to know about 2 languages. And we had a fantastic anecdote in Newcastle where a head teacher gave an assembly on healthy linguistic diet, and children went home and told their grandparents, "Granny, you need to learn another language. That's going to help you live better for longer." And then parents called the head teacher to find out more about it. This is exactly what we want. We want children, parents, adults to be speaking about this, in their private lives, in school, in the playgrounds, and be something that children are aware of. We're talking here about healthy lifestyles, and in the same way that we all are aware that if we want to have healthy skeletons, healthy muscles, we need to be doing physical exercise. We are developing this on that analogy that we need regular exercise of our cognitive functions, and learning another language is an excellent way to do that. So when we have discussions and people ask about, how much is enough and how regularly, again, analogy with somebody who exercises regularly, runs regularly, and then if they stop doing that, of course, their fitness will drop. They might put on weight, and they will not be able to benefit from the fitness that they acquired before. So it's something that needs to be part of our lifestyle. I have linked healthy linguistic diet with healthy school initiative that we have in England. I'm not sure if you have that in Wales, but healthy school initiative is about developing healthy lifestyles, about teachers using every opportunity to talk about eating 5 portions of fruit and vegetables, and doing 2 hours of healthy playing, active playing. So what I'm suggesting is that, healthy linguistic diet should become part of really healthy school initiatives. And also that adults need to be included too. And by adults, I don't mean just teachers and school leaders. I mean also adults who work in the school office, communities, parents. They need to be part of this kind of school ethos. On my website, which I'm going to share with you in a minute, you have a case study of a school in Dublin which has done that, and children who went to office to ask for some things in Gaelic, and staff there were not able to respond in Gaelic, and then they asked the head teacher, can Gaelic lessons be organized for school staff too, because they wanted to be able to respond to children. And this really shows kind of organic ways in which we can develop interest in learning languages and include children and adults too. So what I'm saying when I do these presentations, start with yourself, think how you can enrich your life and provide, opportunities for yourself to exercise your brain. Of course, many people today are using Welsh and English, so already, using their bilingualism, but for other people who may not be Welsh speakers, this is something to think about. How can you do this on a regular basis and enrich your life in the same way that you are thinking about cooking yourself a healthy meal or being physically active? Okay, so I mentioned my website. If you Google healthy linguistic diet, it will come up. And then you will have our publications and blogs there and the case study that I mentioned. This is also open access article that I've written about language hierarchies. And you will also have articles that Thomas and I have written together. Okay, so I'll stop sharing here. And this is all I wanted to share with you. So please, any comments, questions?
Wel, diolch yn fawr iawn, Dina. Diddorol tu hwnt. Can I just check that the interpretation is now working? I know we lost it for a little while. So I'll just say
I've just switched it on again. It was off. So I didn't understand what you just said.
Iawn. O'r gore. Ydy'r cyfieithu'n gweithio, Dina? Gallu di roi dy fawd i fyny os dyw e? Da iawn, o'r gore. Felly ni wedi cael 2 gwestiwn yn barod. Mae gen i lawer o bethau sy'n ni'n hoffi gofyn, ond dydy hynna ddim yn deg. Mae rhaid i fi rannu'r llawr ar gwrandawyr sydd gyda ni. Tybed ydy Martin Pollard sydd wedi gofyn y cwestiwn cyntaf yn dymuno i ofyn e i hunan. Na i oedi ychydig os ydy Martin eisiau dadfiwtio i hunan. Rhywun yna.
Hello, Martin.
Hello, sorry.
Martin, would you like to ask your own question or do you want me to ask it for you? Hello? I think we've lost Martin, so I'd better ask him. This is what he says. In Wales, both Welsh and English are studied by all pupils to GCSE qualification level in the Welsh medium schools. But in English medium schools, Welsh has been taught as a second language, and that's what it's been called. In the new school curriculum, this label will be removed. I don't know, Dina, whether you know, but we are now calling the languages, all of the languages, international languages. So we've made that, got rid of that ML kind of labelling and community. So we distinguish, we've got Welsh and English as languages that are spoken, the official languages of Wales, and then everything else is an international language. Anyway, back to Martin. In the new school curriculum, this label will be removed, the second language.
Can I ask when you made that change?
So then he says, do you think second language? This is part of the rollout for the curriculum that is going to be implemented in a year or two's time, losing track of time. So we're in the middle of that process. Yeah, it has been done, but the curriculum has been rolled out next year. Do you think second language type labelling can institutionalise discrimination in the same way that MFL versus community language labels do? So this problem about calling Welsh, calling it Welsh second language. What are your views on that?
Well, I would definitely like to do focus discussion groups with children, with parents, with teachers. It's not only about how it's presented, it's how people perceive it and how that policy is implemented, how it's, taken on board by different stakeholders. So I think it's not possible to say that without actually spending some time with people in that system and finding out from them how this is perceived and what kind of implications it has.
I can assure you it has had, in my view, detrimental implications for sure, because it's almost as if it's being developed into a language that is somehow different from every other kind of Welsh, which has no real meaning. And coming back to your HLD, the healthy language diet. We started the conference off with HLC, Hobbs, Locke and Condillac. We've come to another set of letters, HLD now, which is much more positive. I suppose the challenge would be even if we can persuade people of the cognitive benefits, the well-being, the healthy benefits you're talking about, then to persuade them to take the plunge. You know, I think we need next now something like from couch potato to 5K kind of an initiative to show people that you don't start speaking fluently on day one. It's word by word, phrase by phrase, idiom by idiom that we're going to grow, not to scare people. But it is a really wonderful concept. Right, next from Lorenzo Salvioni. Does Lorenzo Salvioni want to ask the question? Not sure how this thing works. I know I can't unmute anybody. Wyt ti yna, Lorenzo Salvioni? Is na rhywun yn gallu? Portuguese, Russian, and Arabic, all of which are spoken on multiple continents and have lots of speakers, are heavily marginalized or even become almost invisible in such school systems as the UK one. That also affects negatively public perception of the value and size of these languages and perpetuates ordinary people's ignorance about them. I suppose this is endorsing what you were saying, Diana. Dwi'm yn siŵr os ti eisiau ychwanegu rhywbeth at hwnna, ond yn sicr dyma'r math o ddadleuon oedd gen ti yn dy gyflwyniad. A mae Lorenzo fan hyn yn ei ategu nhw. Hoffet ti ddweud rhywbeth ymhellach am hynny?
Yes, I mean, I've encountered children who, for example, will hide their bilingualism, will insist that they only speak English. And, you know, when you dig deeper with them why they do that, their perception is that their languages are not valued. And that, you know, the desired profile that they want to acquire is just being a monolingual English speaker. So this is, you know, telling us really that we as educators need to initiate, you know, opening the doors for languages in our classrooms. I used to work as a consultant for ethnic minority achievement, and one of my jobs was going to schools and classrooms and monitor if, you know, there was practice that was allowing ethnic minority groups to close the achievement gap. And you know, when I went into classrooms and looked around, I always asked myself, does this classroom reflect the community of learners that come to this classroom? And if you just see English displays, English reference books, and you look at the register, and on the register you can see children from Asian countries, from African countries, and their languages are nowhere in that landscape, then what we are as teachers telling them is that learning happens in English only. We need to be proactive and change this. Once children start seeing their languages on the walls of their classroom as bilingual displays, they will start to feel that, yes, they want to say they are bilingual and they can do that, you know, because that's something that's valued in the classroom. So we need to, as teachers, we need to look at the things that we do, but also things that we don't do and what kind of impact they have.
Dwi'n dychmygu, Dina, bod yna bobl yn gwrando nawr, athrawon falle, ac yn dechrau poeni taw bod nhw'n dysgu dosbarth o blant a falle chymaint ag 20 o ieithoedd yn y dosbarth bach hwnnw, a bod ddim posib iddyn nhw wrth gwrs i ddysgu'r holl ieithoedd hynny. Sut fydde ti'n tawelu hofnau nhw? Pa fath o bethau gallen nhw wneud i ddechrau ar y daith hon? Achos mae agwedd yn rhan mor bwysig yn diwen, nid mor llawn mor bwysig a medru siarad, ond yn sicr yn gam pwysig cyntaf, fyswn i'n dweud. Beth fydde ti'n dweud?
Well, I often come up against these questions, and first of all, I need to say teachers are not expected to teach these languages. They are expected to provide opportunities for children to use them for their own learning. So if you are giving a homework, you can say, can you do this homework in English and in your first language? You know, I was working with a group of Bengali children, and they were all really shocked that I asked them to do that. And they were telling me, Miss, but you can't read Bengali. Why are you asking us to do this? They were actually suspicious while I was asking this. And then I said to them, yes, I can't read Bengali, but I would like to learn about your script. I would like to know what it looks like. And I would like to have displays which are in English and Bengali. And then the children themselves said, yes, and when we have new children who come from Bangladesh who can't read English, they'll be able to read what we've written in Bengali. And they suddenly, saw the value of that. And they were not looking at me suspiciously. But if you have a child who's been going to school for, 7 years, and nobody's ever asked them to do something in their language, and suddenly there's a teacher saying, do this homework in your first language too, they themselves will be alarmed and thinking, this is not right, we only do English here. So, we're talking here about, if you look at the case study of the Dublin school, teachers just basically on worksheets that they give in English, providing several extra lines and saying, if you can do this in another language, please do this line in another language.
Hyfryd iawn. Mae yna sylw arall wedi dod, sylw sydd yn diolch yn fawr iawn i ti o Catalonia ac yn gweud bod y gyflwyniad wedi rhoi nifer o syniadau diddorol iawn ac i ni'n gwybod am y cyd-destun ieithyddol yno wrth gwrs. Cwestiwn fan hyn o'r ffindir a cais i fi ofyn oherwydd bod yr we yn anwadal, i ni gyd yn gwybod y tymlad hwnna. Felly dyma fe, are you aware of any language tuition in the rarer languages in the UK or other schools, so not French, Italian, Spanish, German and so on. In Finland, home language tuition is a part of language policy to support multilingual children's language development and immigrants' integration. For instance, in Helsinki, there are 47 languages being taught this year in over 300 separate groups. Wow, there's some investment there as well then.
Hoffet ti ychwanegu rhywbeth? At University of Turku, I have colleagues there. I've visited schools in Finland. We actually had a project focused on the needs of head teachers of multilingual schools. So I'm well aware of excellent practice in Finland. And, ideally, this is something that we would want to be able to offer. I know European countries that the children are offered tuition as well, but we are not there yet here in England.
Da iawn, a mae'r sefyllfa yng Nghymru gobeithio yn mynd i wella gyda'r cwricwlwm newydd, ond mae yna ffordd bell gyda ni fe'n sicr. Iawn, wel dwi yn gorfod tynnu'r sgwrs ddifyr hon i ben i ni wedi mynd chydig dros amser am mae rhaid i fi ymddeheiro am hynny, ond gan ddiolch yn fawr iawn i ti am y syniadau diddorol iawn a defnyddiol iawn hynny. A o'n i'n sôn gynnau bod hi'n amser cinio, ond ar ôl bywedus di, peidiwch mynd i'r gegin, ewch at eich geiriaduron, fydd yn neud llawer mwy o les i chi, mae'n debyg. Felly'r sesiwn nesaf fydd am 2:00 gloch, un meddwl, mwy nag un iaith. Mae honna yn argoeli i fod yn sesiwn ddifyr tu hwnt, a fydd athro Enlli Thomas yn y gader. Gobeithio gallwch chi ddod nôl ato ni am sesiwn olaf o'n dyn y 3 rhyfeddol yma. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Hwyl fawr.